Hi, kindergarten, and welcome back to hopefully the rest of Lulu Walks the Dogs. So when we last left, Lulu was telling Fleshman that they weren't a team and he walked away. And now we're on chapter 19. Patrick, Preston, Polly, Pete, money for my special treat. Julie, Jackie, Jenny, Joan, move, Joan, money for myself alone. Money, 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 money. Lulu sang a money song as she hurried to Brutus's house on Monday morning. Fleshman was usually waiting for her outside, except today there wasn't any Fleshman. Lulu gave him a minute, and then she gave him 2 minutes, and then she gave him 3 minutes. 3 strikes, you're out, Lulu said to no one in particular, after which she announced, so what if Fleshman isn't here? I'm going to walk these dogs all by myself. I know I can walk these dogs all by myself. She took a deep breath and said out loud, sounding a lot more sure than maybe she was, I'm ready to walk these dogs all by myself. And I have to admit that for a little while, Lulu actually looked as if she were ready, because Brutus followed obediently as Lulu dropped biscuits and made him a dog biscuit trail. Pookie listened politely as Lulu coaxingly tooted her flute, after which she, as in Pookie, not Lulu, pooped. And Cordelia, after Lulu said some gooey blah blah blahs to her in German, was persuaded to waddle out of her hiding place. But as soon as Mr. and Mrs. waved goodbye to their Cordelia and closed the front door, the morning got worse than it ever had before. Lulu, standing under a tree, said to the dogs in one of her bossiest voices, okay, let's move it. Brutus, Cordelia, Pokey. Except she forgot and rhymed the pook part with book. This, as you may remember, hurts Pookie's feelings, which, as you may remember, you don't want to. Yikes. Pookie, leaping up high in the air, fastened her pointy teeth onto Lulu's jean jacket, holding on tight and yelping at the same time, while Cordelia slipped out of her collar and went dashing back onto the porch, where she hid herself deep down in the pile of junk. As all this was going on, Big Brutus, who wasn't as dumb as he looked, circled wildly around and around the tree trunk, wrapping his leash around it just as tightly as Lulu had done on their very first walk together. And Lulu, who had been leaning against the tree as she tried and kept failing to shake off Pookie, discovered too late that she had been totally tied by Brutus's leash to the trunk. Totally, utterly, absolutely, embarrassingly, humiliatingly tied. She couldn't move her arms. She couldn't move her legs. She couldn't chase after Cordelia or shake off Pookie, and she certainly couldn't untangle herself from the leash, still attached at the other end to Brutus, who was standing just out of her reach, triumphantly woofing. And if you find it hard to believe when I tell you that Brutus tied up Lulu on purpose, remember who's in charge of this story? Me. Lulu wriggled and wriggled, but she couldn't get herself loose. So after a while, she stopped wriggling and began to think about what she could do to get loose. And after a longer while, she started wriggling some more, until finally, after feeling that she had been tied forever to the trunk of that tree, Lulu saw, well, you know who she saw, Fleshman. Yep, there he was, good old Fleshman, strolling down the street, playing You Are My Sunshine on the flute. Just the person Lulu did not want to see. Just the person Lulu needed to see, just in time to take another time out. Time out. I think we ought to discuss what's going on here. I don't feel one bit sorry for Lulu, do you? Remember I said back in chapter 1 that since she met Mr. B, Lulu wasn't as big a pain as she'd been? And not nearly as rude, but she sure was being extremely rude to Fleshman. Rude, 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 and also ungrateful. But for Fleshman, helped her over and over, and said he was happy to help and didn't even want money from her for helping. And all Lulu did was boss him around and threaten that she would throw up on him, plus she wouldn't be his friend or even his teammate. Maybe she needs to be kept staying tied to that tree until she says, "I'm sorry, Fleshman." Wait, I think she just whispered, "I'm sorry, Fleshman." Chapter 20. Well, it turns out that Lulu didn't exactly say, "I'm sorry, Fleshman." What she actually said to him was, "Untie me, Fleshman," followed 10 or 20 seconds later by a growly sounding, "Please." Fleshman stopped tooting and stood right in front of the very grumpy, very tied up Lulu. "Teammates untie each other," Fleshman told her, "but I'm not your teammate." "An assistant unties his boss," said Lulu, giving Fleshman one of her fiercer glances. "And Fleshman, you're my assistant, so untie me." "In case you didn't notice," said Fleshman, who wasn't one bit bothered by Lulu's glare, "I am not your assistant anymore. I quit on Friday." "A person can't quit on Friday," said Lulu, "just by not coming back to work on Monday. A person has to say, 'I quit' to quit." "Okay, then," Fleshman said to Lulu, "I quit." And then he walked slowly past her, playing some more of "You Are My Sunshine" on his flute, with Lulu loudly yelling, "You get back here, Fleshman! You get back here now!" Time out. I think that I need to mention that by this time, Lulu and Fleshman were quite late for school. But although for several hours they weren't where they should have been, not one single person noticed that they weren't there. Not Lulu's teacher, not Fleshman's teacher, not any of their classmates, no one. Plus, nobody walking down that street, and lots of people seemed to notice that Lulu was tied to a tree. And not just tied to a tree, but wriggling and yelling and making quite a remarkable fuss. In actual life, this almost never could happen. In the stories I write, things like this happen a lot. Deal with it. Oh, and I think I should mention that by this time Pookie had fallen sound asleep, let go of Lulu's jacket, and dropped to the grass, where she curled up in a tight white fuzzball and yawned a great big yawn and kept on sleeping. And that Cordelia, bored with hiding under the junk pile with nobody trying to find her, it wasn't much fun, waddled over to Pookie, flopped down beside her, and soon was snoring very loudly, in German. And that Brutus, his heavy head drooping lower and lower, was just as deep asleep as the rest of them, except for Lulu, of course, who was wide awake and still screaming, "Get back here, Fleshman, now!" Chapter 21. Fleshman got back there. "Okay, I'll untie you," Fleshman said to Lulu, "but only if you can explain how come you hate me." "Oh, I can do that," said Lulu. That'll be easy." And then she gave him 10 different explanations. "You're always eating carrots. You never eat anything that's bad for you. Your sneakers look like they just came out of a store. You play an actual flute instead of a toy one. You wear that ugly t-shirt that says—" I didn't mention this earlier because that t-shirt makes me want to throw up. "You have this really, really annoying smile. You keep saying things like you can speak French and German. You keep saying things like, 'I'm honored and thrilled to serve you.' You got a day off from school because you're so smart. You're totally an expert on dogs and you don't even have a dog. All the moms and dads in the world think you're perfect, and maybe you are, and how can a person not hate a person who's perfect?" Okay, so I made a mistake. Lulu gave him 11 explanations, but forget about that right now. I'm anxious to hear what Fleshman will say, aren't you? And there's Fleshman's shirt that says, "I'm here to bring some happiness into your life." Chapter 22. Except for a while, Fleshman didn't say anything. He was busy untying Lulu from the tree, which turned out to be much harder than he, or she, or even I had even expected. Before he was finished, however, he took a deep breath and said to Lulu, "It's not fair to hate a person because he's perfect." And then he added, so softly she barely could hear him, "Besides, I'm not perfect. I am so not perfect." So not perfect. Fleshman was so not perfect? Keep talking, Fleshman, Lulu said to Fleshman, who looked pleased for the very first time that day. Stop trying to untie me and tell me more. Fleshman stopped untying and told her more. I don't change my underpants every day. You wouldn't believe the mess that's under my bed. I'm scared of the dark. I'm also scared, make that absolutely terrified of crawly creatures like caterpillars and worms. I can only speak German to dachshunds and French to poodles. Whenever I try to speak German or French to humans, they can never understand me. I play the flute because I've already tried and couldn't play the violin, the piano, the guitar, the clarinet, the drums, and gusili. The what? The what? I really don't feel like discussing that right now. Lulu kept listening cheerfully until Fleshman was done telling more and went back to untying. And then she looked even more cheerfully, said, Terrified of crawly creatures, smelly underwear, can't play the goosely? There's a couple worms he's terrified of. Fleshman shrugged. Lulu kept on talking. But what about all that goody-goody stuff? The carrots, the sneakers, the smile, plus being so honored and thrilled, plus being so smart. That's who I am, said Fleshman. I can't help it, just like you can't help. And all of a sudden, he started to speak in a very loud voice. That you are really, really dumb about dogs, plus you certainly aren't the nicest girl in the world. Whoa, listen to Fleshman. Whoever knew he could talk that way? Lulu glared at Fleshman. Fleshman glared at Lulu. But instead of an impasse, they had a conversation. A quite noisy conversation that lasted the rest of the afternoon and all the rest of the morning and all the afternoon. There were yelling from Lulu and crying from Fleshman and yelling from Fleshman, and crying from Lulu, and from both of them much stamping of feet. But when they were finished with all that, Lulu and Fleshman shook each other's hand. Chapter 23. From that day on, Lulu and Fleshman were more than boss and assistant. They were more than teammates. They were in fact partners, with Lulu offering Fleshman and making him take exactly half the money she earned walking dogs, and promising to teach him, for only $10, how not to be scared of caterpillars and worms, plus whispering, in a voice he could hardly hear, but at least she said it, that although she had no wish to be the nicest girl in the world, boring, too boring, she would try her best to be nice to him. Somewhere deep in his forest, Mr. B is slowly nodding his head and smiling. Fleshman, in return, promised that he would give away the shirt that says, I'm here to bring you some happiness into your life. Teach her, for only $10, to understand dogs. Try his very best to stop saying how honored and thrilled and delighted and smart he was. And work on smiling a less annoyingly smile. Did Lulu stop hating Fleshman? Yes, she did. Did Lulu stop being rude to him? Yes, she did. Was Lulu now willing to talk with him while they walked the dogs together on weekday mornings? Yes, she was. And so did Fleshman and Lulu finally turn into new best friends? No, they didn't. You want a happy ending? Read Cinderella. This story has only sort of a happy ending, because Fleshman is still too annoying for Lulu to love, and Lulu is still too fierce for Fleshman to love. They respect each other. They count on each other. They're partners and dog-walking buddies. If one of them got tied up, the other would help. But unless they turn into totally different people, I'm pretty sure they won't be new best friends. Still, the last time I saw them together, they were walking Brutus and Pookie and Cordelia. Lulu was trying to kick some dirt on Fleshman's perfect sneakers. Fleshman was shaking a carrot in Lulu's face. And as they got near the end of the street, I could hear them loudly singing this money song. Larry, Liam, Lester, Lou, all this money for us two. Kathy, Carly, Chloe, Claire, all this money we can share. Money, 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 money. The last time out. I'm sure you have some more questions for me, and I think I know what they are, so I guess I'll try to help you find the answers. How come some moms, like Fleshman's mom, change their last name when they marry and some moms don't? Answers: different moms are going to have different reasons, so go ask your own mom why she didn't or did. And how come if she changed her last name, she didn't give you a first name like Anderson or Kelly or even Fleshman? And just going to go ahead and stop there and say the end. Thank you for watching.